Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Sterling Live. My name is Caitlin Brower. I am Sterling's social media manager, and I am so excited to have not just one guest with me today, not two. I have three guests with me today, an amazing panel. I've been looking forward to this panel discussion, this entire month. We are currently celebrating Women's History Month. So as the first thing I want to say is Happy Women's History Month. We have a great episode today. As you can see on the bottom, that is our topic. And as you can see, these wonderful guests around me today, we do have Jennifer Ketchens, Chief Diversity and Social Responsibility Officer, David Bloom, General Manager, Gig, Volunteer, and Consumer, and Vincenza Caruso-Valente, General Manager, Retail, Staffing, and Franchise. All three of my guests today are no strangers to Sterling Live. They are always coming on and delivering great insight, and today is not going to be any different. They're going to provide you with just some great stuff for you guys to take away. I'm really excited to get this discussion started. So before we do, I want to give our panelists a brief moment to introduce themselves and a little bit about what they do at Sterling. So Jen, let's go ahead and start with you. Can you introduce yourself to our audience?
Perfect. Yes. Thank you, Caitlin. Jen Ketchens, and I am the Chief Diversity and Inclusion Officer at Sterling. So I am happy to be here and can't wait to give you guys some information about what we're doing this month.
Yes, and thank you so much for joining us. Vincenza, can you go ahead and introduce yourself to our audience?
Absolutely. Thanks, Caitlin. Hey, everyone. I'm Vincenza Caruso-Valente. Caitlin mentioned, I'm the general manager of our retail staffing and franchise business lines here at Sterling. I've been here 11 and a half years and really excited about today's topic.
Thank you for that. And David, can you go ahead and introduce yourself to our audience?
Of course. Hi, everybody. I'm David Bloom, the general manager of Gig, Volunteers, and Consumer. I'm responsible for our success and the success of our clients in those verticals. Been with the company about 4 years. And I am also a proud ally and delighted to be here to celebrate Women's History Month.
Really awesome. All three of you, again, thank you for joining me on Sterling Live today. I do want to take this time to remind our audience, if you are watching live on Facebook, LinkedIn, or YouTube, you can ask our guests questions throughout the show. We are live, so please go ahead in the comment section across each of these social media platforms. And if you have questions for our guests, I will get them over to them as I see fit throughout the show. So let's start with, I want to look into Sterling's commitment to women because I think it's great. I think it's strong. So Jen, I want to start with you. And can you just share an overview or any details, what is our commitment to women?
Oh, great. Yes, I definitely can. And I forgot to tell you that I've been here for 7 years. So I throw that out there. So our commitment to women is really huge at Sterling. We spent a lot of time in 2017 and 18 looking at the women in our company and performing assessments. So we wanted to make sure that we had the right number of women, that we're making sure that we're looking at everyone's talent assessment and placing them in positions that they should be placed in. So it was more of an equitable assessment that we had a couple years ago. And really, it provided a really good a good position for us with all of our women at Sterling. Right now, we are about 52% women at Sterling. The leadership level, we have about 54% that are women, which is huge for us and for us to be focused on that. So later on, of course, now we're focused on diversity and also representation. So that piece of it is really big. So our commitment to the women that we have in leadership roles, as well as just our employee base, we are focused on tenure, making sure that we keep the women that have been here a long time, that we're really looking at what they bring to the table, documenting those things, and making sure that there are places and programs where they can share their experience and their skill set and their knowledge. So we have mentorship programs. We also have some networking programs. We have our ERGs that we can share that knowledge with. Today, I'm sure we're going to talk about the Women's Network. But we really focus on ensuring that we retain our women, that we develop our women, and that we have places for them to feel like they belong at Sterling. So that's our commitment.
It's a great commitment, I must say. I've been with Sterling for a little bit over 2 years, and something so powerful for me to see as I walked through, the doors on my first day was that leadership with a level of women. How lucky for me, being in my career as a younger female, looking at this organization and, the powerful, strong, successful women at the leadership level. So, end to end, that is great, but that one part really stood out to me, and I'm very, very happy to be in an organization like this.
Absolutely, totally agree.
So March is Women's History Month, but the thing I love about Sterling, and we do mention this on many Sterling Live episodes, we are celebrating, we're acknowledging, commemorating, doing so many things for so many different communities all year round. It's not just a month for us. So that makes us very unique as an organization, but I still do want to touch on, what this month is, what we're doing, what it means to you. So this is a question for all three of you, but Vincenza, I'm going to start with you. With what does Women's History Month mean to you?
Caitlin, thanks. It's a great question. For me, it's so meaningful that we're taking the opportunity to recognize women who've not just blazed a trail, but have also been fearless, determined, and have not let limitations deter them from striving to attain their aspirations, both professional and personal, and motivating all women to do the same, regardless of whether they're, to your point, just getting started in their career or they're well along within it. The focus on the month, from my point of view, enables everyone to come to the table and strategize on how to drive that continued empowerment and confidence to be able to build, for building women that are entering the workplace, and even more so now, women that are re-entering the workplace, and for those young ladies who are paving the way for their future and entering the workplace for the first time. As a mom of two young ladies myself, it's so critical for me, and more so, honestly, for them, that they understand the importance and the relevancy of their voice, the impact that they want to make, that they will make, both professionally and personally. I think about all the women and allies in my life over the years, from when I was a child to, up until right now, mom, mother-in-laws, grandmothers, friends, mentors, leaders, and peers, David being one of them, how they've supported me along the way and had such a great influence and impact. And I'm forever grateful for that. And to me, Women's History Month gives us the opportunity to recognize it, really celebrate it, and remind ourselves that it's really important to pay it forward as well.
Absolutely. A really good time to reflect on things, look towards the future, and really rally together, as women, as allies, and see what we can do. So I love that for sure. So David, obviously Vincenza mentioned you as a great partner in all of this. You are, and it was, a no-brainer to have you on this panel today. Can you let us know what Women's History Month means to you?
Well, first of all, I'm very flattered. I aspire to be an ally, and I am delighted that people feel that I make my contribution in that way. But it's actually, I'm so glad this question is how we're leading off. We just had, in February, we had Black History Month. In March, we go right into Women's History Month. And early this month, my 10-year-old son asked me while we were walking the dog one night, is it sexist that we have a whole month just devoted to women's history? And then he asked me about Black History Month. Mm-hmm. And I told him the answer I gave him, which I hope others may or may have other perspective on it. But what I said is that it's not that it's sexist, and it's not that it's racist. It's a recognition that there has been a historical imbalance. And it's a forcing mechanism for us to recognize that there's an imbalance and correct for it, even just for a month, even just through programs like this. It raises our consciousness a little bit, which I think he got to a certain extent. He's still in 5th grade, but what I taught him was what it means to me. It is this recognition that despite our best efforts, optimistically saying best efforts, we still have these imbalances,
Mm-hmm.
and we need to be intentional about correcting them. And that's why these months, or even Hispanic Heritage Month, which I think is in September, or any number of these moments force us to take stock and recognize the imbalances and adjust for them.
I definitely agree with that. And, I like the point of, you bringing up what it means to you. And it was, you're right, a good way to start this episode, because you do get, the opinions, the point of views of how everyone is thinking right now, and what, it might be 30 days, but actually for a lot of us, it's every single day. And how can we move to these recognitions of months into just a 365-day calendar year? So I think that was a really, really great answer. I love the personal tie to it. So thank you very much. And Jen, last but not least, what does Women's History Month mean to you?
So I love both the answers from Vincenza and David. And I think, for me, it is, Vincenza talked more about like being in a career. For me, it's more about who you are, right? And, as David said, we went in Black History Month, and then we go to Women's History Month. So a woman like me have a lot of intersectionalities, right? So I deal with all of these months in a different way, a different light. It's always an opportunity to share, to educate, to ensure that I am a mother of two girls, 22 and 20. And it's important for me because they may not go into corporate America. So the things that I'm doing at Sterling, or the things that I'm doing in corporate world, may not reach them. So how do I ensure that these women, that my little women, turn into good women in the world, no matter where they go? No matter, my first one wants to be a lawyer, the other one is an artist. So those spaces are important as well. So having these months where you recognize a Black person, a woman, someone that has been marginalized throughout the history that we have, is so important to me. And if you don't focus on young people, like David's young son at 5th grade, if you don't focus on young people, then we won't ever change anything. Right? If I spend my time focusing on changing Sterling, that won't get out to the world, right? We have 6,000 employees. It will impact those 6,000. But if you have things and you want to impact outside of the 6,000, then you have to teach. You have to teach young people, and I really focus on that. I really believe that the young people are a part of our future. They are the future, and if you don't spend that time with them to let them know that, what women do on a day-to-day basis matters, right? What we're doing in the courtroom, the boardroom matters. What we do at the hospital by recreating birth with new kids, that all matters. No one else can do that but a woman. And until we understand the vital place that women have in the world, and on procreation and on the future, then we'll be equal and we'll be having an equitable conversation. Of course, I always go back to that, but I really believe like the kids are our future, and that's where we start. But that's my
Yeah. No, absolutely. And I think it's important too that you pulled out, there's a lot of things, like I had said, that no, it's not just Sterling, but the world recognizes, commemorates, celebrates, and things like that. I do like your point that, every time is different. While we might be trying to, execute on the same things, whether it's education, values, looking for the future, there is different approaches to everything, and everything is different, but we're still trying to get to that, like that next level, and making sure that, everything, is equal, is in a good spot. So I did like that point for sure. But absolutely, with educating, the youth of America and the world. So I love that. And, it came out definitely in all three of your answers for sure. So Jen, I'm going to stay with you for this next question, because I am curious, and I know our audience would love to know, what are we doing this month at Sterling, but then also, the entire year to really celebrate and uplift women?
Great question. So we're doing a campaign this year where we're looking at breaking the bias, right? So how do we do that for the women at Sterling, and also all the women in the world? So we started off our campaign with communication, talking about breaking the bias, talking about why Women's History Month is important. We also, this month, we also had International Women's Day as well. So we talked to that, and we looked, since we're a global company, we looked around and say, okay, how do we celebrate our global women that do not have a lot of accessibility to, everyone in the U.S.? How do we highlight them, uplift them, and showcase them? So we are doing podcasts with global leaders around the world. That way we can understand their journey. We can see that if you're in Australia or if you're in Canada, your journey as a woman, as a career woman, as a mother, is pretty much the same. There are some different issues or things that you have to deal with based on your culture and your background, but really it all resonates really well with everyone. So we wanted to make sure that we highlight our global leaders and our global women around the world. The other thing that we're doing is internal campaigns as well, and external campaigns. Our external campaign, we highlighted, I think it was 6 women, and those were global as well, but these were more of our leaders to get their insight on what Women's History Month means to them. It's really important that we show our women leaders as people first, right? Because right now you can see them as a leader, you see them on meetings and they're driving and they're telling us what to do as far as the business is concerned. But really, if you understand who they are and get an insight on who they are, then I think that resonates better with our employees, where they feel like that person is not only representing you in that level, but they're also human, and you can relate to them. Relatability is so important. So those are the things we're doing this month. Of course, we're doing Sterling Live with you today, but we are excited, and people are really excited about being able to look at new faces, get to know other leaders around the globe, and just really listen to everyone's story, because we all have a great story. We all come from a different place, have a different journey, and have really good examples to share.
Absolutely. And, some of the stories I've heard so far, being actively involved in a lot of these internal and external campaigns have been just truly inspiring. And I love, putting these new faces out, because you're right. You do see someone that is a leader on this team, but then this one's a leader on this team. This person's from this part of the world. They're over here, but everyone is working towards the same thing. And a lot of us have very similar stories or means of how to uplift others and help others succeed. So that's been kind of like the underlying factor that comes through on a lot of these campaigns. And I'm sure we're going to hear a lot of it on today's episode as well, as we've already heard a lot of good things. So it's truly great, truly inspiring what we're doing. And this leads me into, the next topic that I want to go over. And it's our Sterling Women's Network. It is one of our employee resource groups. I am a proud member of the Women's Network. It was something where, you joined Sterling. I found out about it and I was like, join, sign me up, press a button, get me in there. And it's really, really inspiring to have something like this at Sterling. We definitely have a lot of groups. But very proud to be a part of this. So Jen, I'm going to come back to you. Sorry to keep you on the spotlight here. But you are our fearless leader when it comes to our ERGs. So I do want to give you a chance just to talk a little bit more about our Women's Network, so our audience can understand it a little bit more.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you. So Women's Network is really one of my, I can't say favorite, but I want to say favorite.
No picking.
Yeah, okay. I have 5 of them and I love them all. And, you can't say you have a favorite child ever, but for the Women's Network, that network is really important because, again, our commitment to women at Sterling definitely feeds into our mission for our Women's Network. So if you would, if I would share that mission with you, it talks about uplifting women, empowering women, having networks that women can go into so they can share knowledge, share experiences, and also just be in a safe space to have connections with women. It's so important, especially in this virtual world that we're in now that we are virtual first, for women to come in and I'm going to say women because we're talking about women today, but for anyone that comes into Sterling, how do you ensure that they're connected to people, right? So you come in the new world, and you have your team, you see your team all the time, but there are other people at Sterling that you can connect with, that you can learn from, that you can grow with, that that can be a mentor or a friend that you grab dinner with. Not being in the office, you don't have opportunities like that. So for the Women's Network, it's really important for us to have that that sense of family, for women to feel like it's okay to talk about things like COVID and being home with kids, running around behind you, or jumping in your lap. It's okay to be in a space where you're talking about your kids going back to school, and the fears that you have with them being in a space where we have this pandemic that we're going in and out of, right? So it's really important for us. So that Women's Network is a good place for women to come into and feel like they belong. We also have a lot of men as allies, and I love that. I am really pushing allyship and engagement at Sterling. We have allyship training, we have allyship communications and programs, to see the men come into this group and really not only just listen to women, because I get a lot of comments about, hey Jen, can you put together some training so we can teach men how to listen to women? So for them to come in and listen and learn and take back stories and experiences, and then use that as they manage women or their peers of women, that is important as well. And I love to see that come together. And I think in the Women's Network, we see that a lot, and we have I think there's over 600 people that are members of this ERG. So we have a lot of people that love this ERG as well. Now, just before the beginning of this year, we're doing a call to action for all of our ERGs. So for this call to action, we want to understand, what can Sterling do? What can we activate now in order for us to improve the communities that we serve? And when I say communities, for the Women Network, that's for all the women that we have. How do we recruit more women? How do we retain women? How do we make sure you develop and you progress in your career at Sterling? And also, how do we make sure we have things that are available to you, for you to belong at Sterling? These are real key things that we're doing across the board for all of our ERGs. It is our call to action. And, we are doing that with the Women's Network. And it's amazing, all of the different initiatives that were suggested for us to do to, move the needle and make sure that we continue to cultivate an environment for our women at Sterling. So I love the Women's Network, and I'm going to say it's my favorite, but it's so important, but just having that sense of family at Sterling is very important to us.
Absolutely. Really important, ERG. Love the call to action. It just further proves, which we do talk about a lot on, a lot of Sterling Live episodes, that, Sterling doesn't just, put out statements on things or say things. They actually act on things. So the call to action for each ERG this year is crucial and very important. As you mentioned, with those call to actions, having meetings and really understanding the next steps or what we can do to be better. Vincenza was one of the leaders on that call of cultivating ideas of doing certain things. So Vincenza, you are a great voice in the Women's Network. So I would love to hear, what does this ERG mean to you?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. Thanks, Caitlin. Personally for me, it's incredibly inspiring and really makes me proud to be part of the organization. As most folks on this call know, and hopefully many out there watching know, Sterling has people first as part of their core values. And I love that. And this group is just a great example of how they mean it when they say it. And to your point, being able to have a group of women and allies being able to come together and be able to be really authentic and be, for lack of a better term, unafraid and feel really safe about having perhaps some uncomfortable conversations or topics, which traditionally are, as we know, really difficult to talk about. You know, what Jen, you had mentioned, talking about inequities or discrimination potentially being felt. These are hard conversations to hear and have. And having this network to be able to talk about them in an open forum and feel safe talking about them, while at the same time being able to address breaking biases and addressing stereotypes and how to handle them and uplift each other. And, you know, no matter who you are, you know, you had mentioned it earlier, Jen, whether you're a mom or you're a woman taking care of elderly family members, or if you're just taking care of yourself, that individuality matters in who you are ultimately and where you are in your journey, and, you know, both a professional and a personal one. And I love that. I've been so inspired by so many of the stories I've heard. I have many amazing women that work for me and allies as well. And I know they've been through, you know, just amazing and, you know, sometimes difficult scenarios. And honestly, it's really inspiring to be part of it and hearing it and being able to work on things together.
Yep. Oh, I love it. It was a really, really good response for sure. And I think, you know, I can definitely agree on so many of those as to why, you know, I love it being in this resource group as well. Jen had mentioned earlier, one of her favorite things is all of our male colleagues that are in the women's network. I must say, when I joined my first meeting, that was the most eye-opening thing to me. And that was actually the most welcoming thing to me as I joined that first call. So David, you are on today's panel as a proud ally. So I do want to ask you the question as well. You know, what does our women's network mean to you?
It's really important to me on a personal basis. I think it's really important to the company. And it really, the ERGs, generally, the women's in particular, I think affects and impacts how we as a company operate in the world. And the reason for that is it forces a kind of personalization and manifests the issues that women face in the workforce in a much more concrete way for allies than just the abstract awareness that there are issues out there. Right? Any one of us can read the studies and say, oh, well, it turns out that women have a hard time getting paid equitably, or they have more responsibilities at home, and therefore they may not be as available during, you know, at 5 o'clock compared to others. That can be very abstract. It cannot be abstract when you are sitting, you know, in a chair face to face, whether it's on a Zoom or in person, with a woman, and she is actually looking at you and telling you, this is actually my life, and it affects my work, it affects my perspectives, and, you know, it affects my ability to forge certain kinds of relationships or whatever that may be. Without the ERGs, it's academic. With the ERGs, it's concrete. And I think what has really been very satisfying to me, and I admit I was nervous, it is action. The ERGs are action at Sterling. They are not just a coffee klatch. They're not just a bunch of people reading a PowerPoint. The act of showing up to these meetings and exchanging honestly, courageously, is having impact. And I try not to miss a session.
Yeah, really powerful, David, response there. And I definitely do appreciate, you know, your tie back to it and everything that you find from this resource group. So I want to stay with you real quick, David, on another question. So, you know, when it comes to being an ally, how can men and other allies support women in their career? But then also, like, any advice you'd give to someone who's currently in the process of being an ally, wants to become one, anything like that?
Well, thank you. I love this question. It is a question, frankly, or a series of questions that I asked myself also, because being an ally is a journey. It's not a destination, right? You're never just done.
Right.
I don't earn ally points that I get to use to retire from being.
Oh, you don't get like a little gift or something like, or like a prize.
Yeah, I'll get the Golden Ally,
Yeah.
Ally Award.
You are our golden ally, dude.
Aw, thank you. Look, I will say, to be an effective ally means you have to have an open mind and an open heart. But most of all, you have to be vigilant in applying your values the same way to everyone. And that is not as easy as it sounds on paper. You think, oh, I have values. Sure, I have values. But when you actually watch yourself carefully, it is really easy to shade those values or how you manifest them a little bit, depending on who you're talking to. Age, race, gender, sexual orientation, you name it. And so the first thing that I tell people when they ask me to how to be a good ally is simply live your values consistently. The second thing I tell them is that while you may need to apply your values consistently, you have to recognize that not everybody is living the same life, and that they come to interact with you and the work with different backpacks full of issues that they've dealt with and experiences that they have and demands on their time. It is real that women feel, or either by inclination or obligation, that they have to take care of kids and elderly parents and their households more than men do. That's been studied. Mm-hmm. And I can tell you, I have a wife who is a chief marketing officer at a very fast growing fintech company, published author, big shot. And I can tell you, she wakes up in the morning and her first thought is, I got to get the kids out of bed and get going. It is not, what's my day look like? Right. So even at her point in her career, she cannot escape these impulses that course. So first, live your values, but second, know that how you have to live those values might vary depending on who you're talking to, man, woman, age, etc. And the third thing I tell people is to be humble. It is, there's the old joke that not everybody is an above average driver, but if you ask them, everybody says they're an above average driver. And I think if you ask anybody, are you a good ally? A lot of men would say yes, mm-hmm. because they think in their hearts they would like to be thought of that way, and so forth they live that. But you have to be humble enough to recognize that not everybody is an above average driver and not everybody is an effective ally. If we were, women wouldn't be making 78 cents on the dollar. Right? That just scientific, like it is in the data, men are not doing a good enough job. Mm-hmm. Can't argue with that. So I teach people, be humble, because you have biases too. And if you are not aware of them, they will drive you mm-hmm. in ways that you may not even know, because in your heart, you think you're doing the right thing. So be humble, live your values, recognize individual differences, and be humble enough to know that you may be screwing up in ways that you don't intend.
Really great advice, David. Thank you for that. So Vincenza, I want to come to you for this next question because, women really do lean on, men as our allies, and it's really good to have that support. But, women supporting women is also another form of allyship. So what is the importance of women being allies to other women?
It's a great question, Caitlin. And, I can tell you a little fun fact about myself. I am one of 4 girls. So I literally grew up with women my entire childhood and continue to do so with my 3 amazing sisters and my mom. Mm-hmm. So for me, I understood very early on the importance of allyship in the home with just my core females that I had. But back to your point around the importance of women being allies to each other, studies have proven, like David said, that women who are supportive of other women are more successful in their professional and ultimately their personal aspirations and success. That is a fact. And if the world has taught us anything in the past several years, collaboration amongst us enables trust and drives results. And ultimately, that's, a huge and tremendous impact that we need to make sure we keep top of mind and front of mind when we are working on being allies to each other. I think in the traditional sense, and, I saw a lot of this early on in my career. I've been working for, 24 years now. But I think in the traditional sense, back to David's point around some of the imbalance and inequity that exists, and especially in the corporate world and in the work world, women have been taught to be competitive with each other because of the notion that the number of opportunities that are available to them are not plentiful enough. Therefore, you need to, you kind of need to be, really cutthroat when it comes to having another woman standing alongside you. And again, I think that's just one of those biases that exists and has existed out there for quite some time. And I've, unfortunately, I've witnessed in the past, women feeling the need at times to, for lack of a better term, blow out somebody else's candle to light their own. Mm-hmm. And, it's at the end of the day, witnessing that had a huge impact on me and said, I want to make sure, to David's point, I'm always bringing my best self and making sure I'm never doing that. And like I said earlier, always trying to pay it forward and making sure that being a good ally to others and each other ultimately drives productivity. It drives our progress as women in the workplace. And that when you look at it from that lens and approach it in that way, from a a woman's perspective, you're creating a sky's the limit notion. It's kind of the strength in numbers. When there's one of you versus 20 of you, mm-hmm. Voice is louder, it's more profound, it's more impactful. So
yeah.
And actually, can I jump Absolutely. In on that point? Because mm-hmm. I think what you're touching on, it is so important. And I don't mean to mansplain, but I'll tell it from the man's perspective. In a lot of companies, not just in olden times, but today, there was an effective quota for women in leadership. Maybe not intentional, but, we have a woman, right? Like, that was kind of, everyone else was like, that was it.
Yeah.
And so women, if you wanted to rise up in the executive ranks, it was practically a zero-sum game. So the system was rigged and forced women to compete with each other as opposed to competing with everybody.
Yeah.
And so you force that kind of competition, that zero-sum game for those few slots that someone might feel comfortable giving to a woman. And then you judge the women for not being supportive enough of each other. Like, you can't win.
Yeah.
That's an awful cycle. At Sterling, what I think is so helpful is that we actually have a really equitable population of women in leadership, women and men in leadership. Like, of the general managers, I think half of them are women. I think something like that. More than half. I could be wrong, but yeah. Like, a lot of our C-suite are women. It makes a real difference. There's enough room for people to rise up and live their best self and achieve what they want to achieve. There is not when you give them just a narrow channel that only one person can navigate.
I agree with you, David. And I think that's been one of the, back to the, what's so great about the Women's Network here and what's just been great about Sterling is that that element, that perception, it doesn't exist here. It's what you're saying is fact. More than half of the general managers are women. Our chief product officer, woman. Our chief people officer, woman. Our chief diversity officer on this call, woman. So again, it goes back to my point of when we work together and we actually talk about the things. And I think this is another element with women is that we're afraid to talk about like what our weaknesses are together because we don't want to show our cards. Like, this is where I'm not great, but I believe that you are. Like, once you get over that notion of they can actually help me and enable me versus looking at it as a potential detriment, again, that's where, from my point of view, the sky's the limit. So, and I think to your point, our senior leadership team and our other leadership in Sterling it's a great testament to that.
Yeah. And if I could just jump in a little bit, it goes to the commitment that Sterling's made to women, right? And it's top down, right? It's our CEO, it's our C-suite, it's our senior leaders, everyone's commitment to ensure that we cultivate a culture that enables you to progress, to develop, to be successful, to feel, even if you don't want to climb the ladder, right, you still feel like this is a great place for you to learn and take what you need and move on to somewhere else. I think it's really important that we're letting everyone know how great this culture is. It's amazing, right? So we could talk about all of the ERGs and we could come away with, we are really working on this culture and we really mean it, and we've doubled down on it, and we want to make sure that it's there. So having women leadership, when I first started at Sterling, we had a CEO that was a woman. And I was like, okay, I'm going to work for that company. Because that was inspiring to me based on my personal growth and how I wanted to move up the corporate ladder, and it made me feel like you can do it. So if you see Vincenza as a general manager and she owns her own vertical, that is so inspiring to everyone in the company. Especially the young women that come in and they're analysts and are trying to figure out where do they go, then they can form an affinity with someone else that they know, that they see, that they can, and want to be a part of that. So this culture at Sterling is amazing, and having the women's network is amazing, and having the allies. David, going back to your question, your answer about allies, I would just say one thing, if I could add to your list, is you have to do action. You have to have action. Like if you want to be an ally, you have to be an ally in front of the person. You have to be an ally behind the person, where you're in closed doors, you're in other meetings. If someone wants to talk about opportunities, you have to be willing to bring those people up and be an ally for a woman, for someone in LGBTQ, or someone that's Black, or any other, marginalized group. That is important, because if we don't have action and we all just sit and hope for the best, then we may find ourselves in a dark place, because sometimes the best just doesn't happen, right? We have to activate something. We have to do something. And I believe, I love your list, because I see you do all those things. So I think it's just important for others to hear us say, hey, you have every best intention going on for you, but now let's put some action behind it and see what happens.
Agree.
Yeah. Agreed too with everyone. I love the dialogue between the three of you. It's really, a lot is coming out of this discussion, and a lot of it's just coming out of even beyond the questions that I had put aside for you. So a lot of good stuff coming out of it for sure. So I want to shift gears a little bit, and I want to talk about women in the workforce just generally. So it's not specific to Sterling, just kind of what's going on right now, what organizations can do when it comes to hiring, retention, all things like this. So Jen, I'm going to start with you with this question. What are some ways in which organizations can help women feel more confident when taking the next step in their career?
Oh, such a great question. Confidence is everything, right? And I really believe, like, as a woman, you can come into a position and you can already be confident. You can be confident because you're coming from a different position that you were successful in. You can be confident because maybe you went to a great school, right? And you have all these great accolades from different companies. One thing for organizations to do for women, like even if you have all of these things and you possess all this confidence, is to ensure that they talk to women to tell them. Sorry, someone is coming in my door right now. Sorry.
Perfect timing.
Life is
Just
happening.
make sure you know them. That's all I care about.
Oh my God, it's my dad from Michigan. Hold on.
It's okay. This is why I love live streaming.
Oh God, it's going to get loud, so I'm going to go really quick.
That's
But
okay.
it's really important for organizations to talk to women that are looking to move to another position or to a promotion. You don't have to have everything in the job description. And I want every woman that is listening to this to really understand that a job description is just a suggestion of what's going to happen in this job. There will be a lot of things in this job that is not on this list.
Yeah.
So if you don't qualify and you can't check every box on this post, still do it. Still try because inspiration and potential matters. So if I can give one thing before my house goes crazy and loud, is that you do not have to qualify for everything. Believe in yourself, believe that you can do it, and then let's make sure that our organizations also provide guidance and support to say, hey, yeah, you're right there. Why don't you go do it and try? And I think that helps people that already have confidence get more confidence because your company believes in you and they want to ensure that your goals and your path and your passion is being fulfilled at that organization.
Absolutely. Some great advice there, not just for employers, but for job seekers as well. So a lot of good thoughts there. So
can I I'm
yeah,
sorry, can I just say,
absolutely. Go ahead.
not only I also want to make I also want to make sure that, to Jen's good point, women need to have the confidence to take that leap when they're 80% of the way there.
Mhm.
I think the studies show that a man overestimates their qualifications enough to go for the next job, and women underestimate it, right? But it is also up to leadership, allies and not allies, to recognize that women may not raise their hand in the same way that a man would. This goes back to my point about having the different social pressures and different sort of, the baggage that women may bring to their work life may be different than the baggage a man brings to them. I had an intern at a previous job, a very, very, very smart young woman who did some research. It led to a big meeting. We went into the conference room with a bunch of other folks, and it was a small conference room. We couldn't all fit at the table. And so she sat at one of the chairs on the side. It wasn't that the conference table was full. It was that she just self-selected. And I told her to get her ass up. Sorry.
That's okay.
Go sit at the table. And she's like, wait, but other people may be there, more senior people. I said, I don't care. You're here first. Take the damn chair.
Yeah.
And she did. Now, I don't want to take full credit. I don't know that this is indicative. She's now Forbes 40 under 40. So it could be, I may have had a little bit to do with it, just in that one little mentoring moment. But bosses, be on the lookout.
Yeah.
This stuff happens in the blink of an eye. And if you are not prepared to Jen's point, take action, support them, encourage them, correct them, or do it to someone who is holding them back, then you are not part of the solution.
Sometimes it does take those little moments, and you could be absolutely correct. That could have made a huge impact on this individual because a lot comes from it. It's the trust in you as a mentor. It's that, that little, give as a mentor and things like that. So sometimes it is those little moments, and it does help people who maybe have big aspirations. And, some women may not want to jump all in at one time, but I think it's a great example. And I'm really happy that you shared that with our audience for sure. So, Vincenza, I have a question for you. As we are celebrating Women's History Month, what are some of the ways in which organizations can help women feel like they can be their authentic selves, be authentic at work, and then bring their whole selves to the job? I know we touched on this a little bit earlier, but I'd love to expand on it.
Yeah, sure. Well, first and foremost, I think we already talked about it. Jen mentioned it. We are all four of us active participants of it, but these resource groups are so critical and important. So from my point of view, like, organizations need to make sure that they have these safe, open, engaging environments for women and their allies to come together and talk and have dialogue and not be afraid to have those dialogues, and more importantly, make those meaningful connections amongst each other. I think that's, especially now, given we're still a bit in this work from anywhere, work from home, hybrid, being able to have those connections with folks, because we're not with everyone every day like we used to be, is really important, both for an individual's growth, development, their wellness, their performance, both at home and at work as well, and having balance within both. So I think the groups are really important. More, I think, as important, it's really critical that organizations let people know and women know that their voices mattered and are being listened to, and encouraging them. I think the piece is that you have to kind of push and encourage people to participate and really invest the time in themselves. So often we hear, gosh, I just don't have the time to do X, Y, or Z for myself, or if I just had an extra half hour. I think it's really important that organizations and leaders really help their team members and their women, and their allies working through investing the time, because it does matter. And ultimately, it builds the ability to encourage really strong dialogue to happen. It really helps people approach conversations with more confidence and openness, because there's that element of safety and it being okay to talk about things that, again, may not necessarily be comfortable to talk about. And I think that allowing people to approach conversations with curiosity, asking questions, being confident about asking questions. I think that's an observation I have with women at times, and I even see it in my girls at times, is that they're afraid to ask questions because they don't want to seem like they don't know the answer, and they don't want to seem like they are not qualified enough, or they're not ready for something. I think it's really important that you facilitate that ability to be curious, and at the same time too, also not being afraid to be direct. And I know that's something, David, I think you had mentioned it earlier, where men are much more overt in saying, like, I am overqualified for this. Again, I'm using the stereotype, right? And women are perhaps a bit more reserved about it. But I think that just being able to build that ability and that confidence to use your voice in a meaningful way is really important. I think, Caitlin, final thing, you had mentioned it earlier, but I have personally myself found tremendous value over the course of my career, both with finding myself a mentor, male, female, at many stages in my career, multiple at times. I even reverse mentor. I have leveraged the opportunity to get reverse mentored by someone. So I've actually been mentored by millennials to help me with being a better leader, a better woman, and ultimately, again, back to my concept of always wanting to pay it forward and focusing on it that way. Again, from my point of view, that both a structured and what I'll call an independent or deliberate mentoring and coaching program at the organization, and then encouraging people to do that for themselves and women to do that for themselves, is really important. Fosters trust, it elevates people's positions, and it builds up everybody around them when they see people investing in themselves. So I think the investment piece in yourself, first and foremost, and then the organization investing in them, is really key.
It's perfect. And I'm a huge advocate for mentorship as well. I think I have a mentor for every aspect of my life. So you can't have enough mentors. So I love that. I love that addition in there, because it is very important. And listen, you don't know everything. So you got to go find someone who knows the answer to something. Right. So love that. David, I have a question for you here. So listen, hiring employees is exciting. It's, every new hire should be a huge celebration for your organization. So, what can organizations do to hire more women and celebrate gender diversity?
So another great question, and one that there's probably many answers to. Like, I don't think there's a one size fits all that just solves the problem of hiring great women. I think the first thing to do, the first thing I try and do, and I'll speak personally, is not rely on my own networks, right? Because I'm friends with who I'm friends with, and chances are those are all people who I have had common experiences with. And if I'm going to diversify my hiring pipeline, I have to diversify where I go looking for those people. Mm-hmm. So whether that's women or minorities or whatever that may be. The second thing, and Jen actually touched on this before, is make sure that you are writing inclusive job descriptions. especially for when you're targeting a younger crowd. Because if you are too specific, it gives an opportunity for someone, again, women are, traditionally, historically, whatever, will look and they'll see all the reasons that they can't do something, as opposed to men who will look all the reasons they can. So be mindful about the job description and have it be inclusive about what you're looking for, not exclusive. And then third, in the hiring process, make sure you have a diverse panel of people doing the interviewing. Don't rely on as a man, I do not want to rely on my own perspective when I'm interviewing candidates, because first of all, I may want to hire a man who will not be respectful and a good ally to the women on my team. And they may have sussed that out in an interview. If I'm interviewing women, may not recognize and understand all the things that have gone into their resume, but a woman might. So keep yourself, and I have other things as well, but keep your mind open and force it. Mm-hmm. To Jen's point, actions, force yourself to be open-minded and have an inclusive process, because it won't just happen.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So we do have a question on LinkedIn. Jen, I'm going to punt this question over to you. And I do think it's a good one. And I'll explain it a little bit after I read it to you. So are there specific call to actions that will benefit women in the workplace other than the employee resource group? So to what I'm taking this question is, so the women that are maybe not in the ERG. So can you specifically touch on, because I know we had a meeting a couple months ago about what we want to do as an organization. Can you just touch on kind of what we're looking to do? Obviously things might not be fully set in stone yet, but just kind of like the benefit for women at Sterling in general.
Yeah, so that's a great question, and we have so many things that you can do if you're in the ERG. But even if you're not a part of the ERG and you want to play a part in these initiatives that we have for women, please reach out to me, because there's a lot of things that you can sign up for. You do not have to be a part of the team. You do not have to be a part of the committee. But if you want to be a part of the call to action, then we have a place for you. I mean, and I say that sincerely. But for when I think about call to action, and of course we focused on recruiting, retention, progression, and accessibility. Like we focus on all four of those buckets. There's still things that we can lean ourselves into as well, right? Because what we were looking at is really based on how do we move the needle with women or with the other ERGs. So if there's something that you are aware of, there's something that you've come from a different company and there's something that you've seen work well, we are very open to suggestions. And what I can do is put our email address in the chat so you can send us an email and give us a suggestion. But we are really open to anything. I think one thing with Sterling is that, even in the process of hiring me and allowing me to drive D&I, Sterling could have hired someone that spent 25 years in diversity, right? My background is in supply chain management, and I came to Sterling to build our procurement organization. So looking at that, right, it's what we're talking about right now. So I could have showed Josh my resume, say, hey, this is what I do. And he could have said, oh, I need 10 years of this. You're not ready. This company positions you and give you the opportunity to live out what you're created to do. And when I say that is that my background is really building organizations, it's building like departments and things like that. So if we start a new new position like D&I, that's new. So it has to be built. So I can lean into the things that I know how to build, but also it leads into my passion. And it's just important. So I say that because, if you are a part of Sterling and you want to be a part of any of our initiatives, please reach out to me, because we have a lot. And this year we are just starting with the call of action. We will have everything buttoned up by the first part of April, probably the second week of April, and then we'll be able to communicate exactly what we're going to take forward in year 22 and 2023. There's a few things that there's a few quick wins that we're going to do, but then there's certain things that we believe that if we absolutely change some of our processes and our our standard operating procedures, that it will help with our systemic changes that we're looking to do at Sterling. So some of these things will be, more of a 24-month roadmap. But if you're interested, please do not hesitate. We have lots to do.
Yes, of course, a lot to do, but it's very exciting for sure. So I have one final question for the panel, but Vincenza, I'm going to start with you, and then David and Jen, I'll come to you for your thoughts, because I know Vincenza's got some stats here for us to look at. So we saw a lot of women put their careers on pause due to COVID-19, and some of them are now struggling to come back into the workforce. So can you provide some more detail into this and how, other women and allies can help, kind of make this no longer an issue, hopefully?
Yeah, thanks, Caitlin. I can tell you that the statistics are really profound. To your point, specifically what's happened over the past 2 years and the impact COVID-19 has had for women in the workplace. Just some fun facts for everyone. Women represent roughly 50% of the workforce and account for 75% of purchasing decisions in the world. So their participation in the workforce and the workplace shapes how product and services are offered and sold. So that perspective, priceless, first and foremost. So fewer women in the workplace, ultimately, it impedes individual business success, and it also has a negative impact on aggregate economic growth. These are facts. And women at the end of the day, too, we've mentioned it, they also hold the lion's share of caregiver responsibilities. Care of children, care of elderly family members, care of themselves. It's a huge additional element to their lives that they are primary owners for, and it's a lot. But really quickly too, another recent stat from the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics report: between February of 2020 and January of 2022, 1.1 million women exited the workforce, and they represented 63% of all jobs that were lost. So what does that mean? That means that it would take women roughly in the next year about 180,000 jobs a month, which is what the growth level for January 2022 was, by the way. It would take about a year for women to catch up to what they lost over the past 2 years. The stats for men by January of 22, so a couple months ago, all jobs that men lost during COVID were regained by January of 22. So that right there should actually tell you just what that disparity ultimately looks like. So back to your question and point on, what women and other allies can do. I think that I think everybody mentioned it a bit, especially, David, you had mentioned it around recruitment. You have to look at populations much differently right now. And again, it goes back to using the example of women being primary caregivers in their homes, and that gap in employment that may exist, and I put it up in air quotes there, it's always been a stigma, right? Oh, she's been out of work for 2 years. She doesn't know what's going on. She's going to be behind. She's not qualified. She's not going to be best suited, versus saying that woman was strong, resilient, made a difficult decision, and made it for the greater good, not for their individual self. And the value and the strength that comes along with hiring someone like that, and really just shifting your mindset at looking at, and we're just talking about this one population of women and who exited the workforce, right? So how women and allies can help with them, that to me, that's part number one. Just shift the way that you're recruiting and looking at things like gap in employment. Secondarily, looking at populations who left the workforce but want to come back. So people that early retired, I've seen this happen in my own personal life, where I had women and even allies who departed and said early retirement, and then a year later said, I can't do this, I need to go back to work. there's, again, tremendous value in these populations. And we can't take advantage of the fact that people made hard decisions, personal decisions during the pandemic that perhaps have put them in a different position now, and they see things from a different perspective. And these perspectives are different, and they're valuable, and they're important. And back to my point earlier, it helps drive business growth, cultural growth, economic growth. And again, just changing our mindset at how we look at that.
A lot of eye-opening stats in there for sure, for all of us to take a look at and kind of peel back and totally understand. But I think it's great advice, Vincenza, that you do have for organizations, and then also for, if someone just needs to seek out help or advice on something. I think it was really, really good. David, would love to get your thoughts on that.
I mean, everything Vincenza said, yes. I think, look, as I said earlier, if you assume everyone's going to have the exact same resume and exact same set of experiences, you will hire the exact same person every time, and you will be worse off for it. I have my own favorite stat to go along with the stats Vincenza said, which is that the top quartile of firms that have the top quartile in terms of gender diversity are 25% more likely to be above average in income. So 25% more likely because they are in the top percentage of firms with diversity. And the reverse, the bottom 25% or the bottom 20%, you're 15% or 19% less likely to be above average. Mm-hmm. So this is just a good business decision. So as long as you keep your mind, keep your mind open, recognize that people have different experiences and take different paths to get there, and know that they may not look like, as men out there who are listening, it may not look like what you expect it to look like or what your path was. Mm-hmm. But know that even though it may come with a little extra element of uncertainty for you, that the data shows you are more likely to have a positive outcome with a diverse team. Doubly so when it's ethnic diversity, not just gender. So keep your damn minds open and you will be better off for it.
Mm-hmm. Always data-driven with David and Vincenza on these Sterling Lives. So I do no, but it's good because you definitely put that aspect into it. So we actually have to see the numbers and see the data and do something about it, like you said. So love it. Jen, any thoughts on this?
No, I agree with both. I think data is important, right? And if we look at the industry data, that is really what matters. And I think the change and shift because of the pandemic with women, I think with the just the representation of where women are in their leadership roles is important, right? So I think numbers are important, and since we're all in corporate America, the things that get measured gets actioned, right? I'm gonna go back to my word action, right? It's so important because if you look at numbers and you see things that have changed and you know the why behind it, then it is so important. Yeah. So yeah, I agree. I think they said it really well.
Yeah. All of you have been saying things very well on this episode. I should have put action somewhere in the title because it was definitely a theme we saw throughout. But yes, I do want to take this time just to remind our audience, if you have any final questions, please go ahead and send them in now. As we wait for any final questions to come in from our audience, I want to get some final thoughts from the three of you. As I just said, it truly was a phenomenal episode. So much to take out of it, and really, really just a powerful conversation with the three of you on this panel. So let's go ahead and get some final thoughts. Anything that you want to leave our audience with today? So Vincenza, I will start with you on final thoughts.
Yeah, I agree with you. It's been a fantastic session, really great dialogue, wonderful to hear everyone's perspective, even though we get to engage so much in our everyday work lives. I'm hopeful that what people take away from this is that not being afraid to try something different, try something new, find and be open to building stronger relationships with other women, finding allies, supporting women. I think that's one thing I failed to mention that I want to make sure we also are mindful of as well, is that helping someone that perhaps you see is struggling and needs the help, but doesn't take the time to help themselves and just needs that encouragement or that extra push. I think now more than ever, it's so important to just make sure you're taking that time, because ultimately when you're helping someone, you're potentially making a massive impact on them that you may not even be recognizing or realizing. So again, I love the theme of action that we had and we continue to have, and the amazing environment that Sterling fosters for all of us to be able to have great conversations like this. So thank you.
Thank you. David, final thoughts for our audience.
Yeah, look, if I'm talking to you guys out there, your life will be better and you will live in a more equitable world, which is in everybody's interest, if you take action and support women in the workplace. Just do it. Sorry, I don't know what else to say.
I know.
Obviously,
It's perfect. It's perfect. Don't worry. Our final thoughts don't need to be monologues. It's honestly, it's really good takeaway there. Jen, final thoughts from you.
Yeah, I like to just do it. I like simple, and to the point. One thing I just want to, I guess my final thought is that, yeah, this has been a great conversation. I really feel like Sterling is really cultivating these experiences and these spaces for us to have these conversations, and it's amazing. I really hope that other companies are doing the same thing. And even if you haven't started with your journey on diversity and inclusion, start with conversations. That's how we started here at Sterling. And then let's, see how it will change the culture that you have at your company. Now for Sterling, and going back to Women's History Month, I want to bring it back to something simple. Today I was reading something and it was talking about strong women. And I've had so many strong women in my life. And the way that I've received support and encouragement and just empowerment from women have changed me and has made me the person that I am today. So I really, really want to leave everyone with, understand a strong woman. May you be that strong woman. May you raise that strong woman, and may you raise your sons to respect the strong women that they come encounter with. That is so important, right? And if we think about how do we ensure that Women's History Month is something that is celebrated based on that. So I'm going to leave you with my short answer because I didn't want to go too long.
No, it was perfect. I think it was a very powerful way to end this episode. I love the episodes where I'm smiling ear to ear when the clock is over and we're done with the live stream. It is one of those episodes, all-star panel that we had today with Vincenza, Jen, and David. Thank you all, as always, for coming on Sterling Live with me. This truly was a powerful conversation, a lot of takeaways, a lot of good things for people to write down, execute on, take action, like we said a million times in an hour and 10-ish minutes or so. Thank you, as always. If you are watching live now on Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube, if you are catching us on demand as well, we will see you on the next Sterling Live. But again, thank you so much to my phenomenal panel. I really enjoy always having you on, and don't be a stranger because you're going to come back on another episode. But again, thank you all so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Caitlin.
thank you.